So a couple nights ago, I was triggered. And when I say triggered, I don't mean like I had a strong reaction. The original meaning of the word triggered was that um, something set off a severe PTSD reaction, usually in the form of like a panic attack or flashbacks. In this case, there was um, no panic attack, no anxiety. It was just that I was sent into a flashback. And for me, the way that manifested this time, and it's kind of different because I have complex PTSD, which means it was a very lengthy, complex, drawn out trauma. It wasn't just a single trauma, like a single thing happened that was a traumatic event. I had multiple traumatic events intertwined. I would say hundreds of them over the course of many years. Um, so, um, so for me, what that means is when my PTSD gets triggered, it can look different because a lot of different traumas can be triggered in different ways. But what happened a couple nights ago, I was just laying in bed and I'm still not sure what triggered it. I can't really get into thinking about it too much right now because if I do, it might send me back into it. But I wanted to share for people who don't really have an idea of what PTSD is and how disabling it is. Because when I say I can't work a regular job because of PTSD, for some people it sounds like an excuse. Why don't you just like work on the PTSD? And I am. I have been for about a decade now. But it's unusual, I'm told, in how severe and complex it is. That's just what I've been told by my therapist. Um, it's quite common for me to hear from a therapist that I am by far the most severe case that they have ever encountered. So, do I get a prize? Um, anyway, so I wanted to share kind of a picture of what it can look like, especially when it's not connected with panic, because it often is for me, but not always. So I was just laying in bed and everything felt very strange. It felt like I was getting all these thoughts coming to my head that were like, the small day to day little thoughts that you get throughout your day of like, oh, I need to do this, and oh, have I remembered to do that, and oh yeah, it was great that I did that thing today. They're just like the little things that they don't stick in your mind years later, and those thoughts were popping into my head. Um, just little things like, oh, I need to take Coley for a walk. Well, Coley was our dog. He died several years ago, and but that would pop into my head as like a present thing that I need to do. And it's like, where did that come from? And then it was like, oh yeah, I might need to take a shower soon. And the image of a shower is not our shower, but a shower from when I was living several years ago. And so those started popping into my head, and it was a little disorienting because I was like, but that's not my life right now. This is my life. And but they started flooding in. I got more and more of them. It's like the more I resisted it and tried to be like, no, 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 I'm in the present here. And this is just laying in bed trying to fall asleep. And the more I like tried to ground into the present, the more these thoughts pushed back. And it's not just those little thoughts. It's how your past self views things differently, has slightly different perspectives because you've since lived and your perspectives have kind of morphed, and so you're thinking differently. And usually we don't even really notice it. We look back on like, I don't know, journal entries or videos or just things that we've said or done in the past and been like, man, I was a different person back then. But you don't feel those perspectives as present. You feel them as a past thing. And when I was going through this flashback, and this lasted hours, I was feeling those same perspectives as if they were present. It really was like being in a different person's body. It was past me, climbing back into past me, and it wasn't something that I did intentionally. It's not something I wanted. It felt very bizarre. I just lay there with all of these thoughts racing through my head. And eventually what I've learned to do is when I recognize that, oh, I'm in a flashback, then most of the time trying to stay grounded to the present is just too exhausting, and it doesn't really help me at all. It makes things more confusing. And so I texted Lim, who was up doing videos, and I was just like, I'm in a flashback. I don't need anything, but just so you know, I'm not really in the present right now. And he's experienced this before. He has seen me in these before. And so, and he knows that, when I'm in one, if it's from before a time that I knew Lim, then I don't even register him as being a supportive person in my life. I, you know, I, there's part of me that's still present that can be like, oh, okay, I should inform Lim of this, let him know. And in theory, like, my brain knows who he is. Like, I still know that he's my husband, and I'm still aware of him. But it's like the emotional side of my brain, Lim just doesn't exist. And Loki too, for that matter. So Loki woke up crying, as he typically does throughout the night while I was in this flashback. And I'm still able to recognize that's my baby. My baby's crying. I should pick him up and nurse him. So I can still go through the motions, but there's no emotional connection, at least that I can tell in that moment. It's just, yep, there's a baby. Okay, cool. He's done crying. He's asleep. Great. Like, now I can, just put him over there. Like, whereas usually I'm very much like, I'm very emotionally attached to Loki. So I'm just like, oh, look how adorable he is. I don't want to put you down, and so I took care of the things that were important to do, which is let Lim know and do the bare minimum with Loki. And other than that, I just had to lay there with all of these disorienting thoughts and perspectives. And they're intrusive. You can't counteract it with other things, because I couldn't even counteract it with, no, I'm living in this house now, and I have a family now, and things are different now. Like, even that was too much. My brain was sent so far back that it didn't believe me. My own brain did not believe what I was telling it. And these are just the bare basics of being present. And so once I had taken care of my responsibilities, I was just like, okay, these thoughts are going to wash through me. All of these feelings, all of these perspectives, all of this day-to-day tiny details is going to flood through me as being present and urgent, and that's going to feel really bizarre. But as long as I am on this bed and just laying here, then I am safe, and there is nothing that I need to do, that it will eventually resolve on its own. It was exhausting. It's hard to explain just how it takes up just every bit of mental energy you have. I think it started to resolve. I looked at the clock, and it was at, I think, about 2 a.m. And my guess is it started around like 9:30 or 10 at night. It's hard to tell because I initially didn't realize I was going into it. It's kind of like a few thoughts at a time, and then it just like whoosh, like a big flood of it. And I have to be careful, like, how I word this, how much I share, because my default is like, oh, I'll just share everything, and then that tends to send me into another one. So I have to be careful, but it's so important for me to raise some awareness about this, because there's still a lot of stigma around PTSD. The important thing to me is that people become more educated and aware. And then the aftermath of that is that I I was really mentally exhausted, really emotionally exhausted. The next day, I was just like, I feel like everything is off, everything is wrong, everything is disjointed, um, in a way that it's like I can't really put my finger on, but it's nothing feels like stable and right. It's kind of like you take for granted that the ground is stable beneath your feet. And then if you've ever been in an earthquake, it's kind of like that, where you're kind of shaken up a little afterwards of like, I thought that I could trust this thing, and can I really? Like, is it gonna do it again? Like, and so it's like that, except it's your personal baseline in your day-to-day life. You expect that you get to have this sense of, this is the present that I am living in. And yeah, if you want to rehash old memories, you can choose to live in the past, but it's choice. And with PTSD, when you get a flashback like this that just hits you out of nowhere, then afterwards it's this like, wait, can I trust? Can I trust what I've got here? Can I trust my personal sense of equilibrium? Really, is what it is. Um, and I've just learned that it just takes time, and so I've learned not to force it. And it was hard because it was like, I have all these goals. Like, I have these financial goals. I have these goals, these personal life goals. Like, it was really hard to be present with Loki when I can't even feel my own sense of stability. It's like everything gets scrambled during the flashback, and on your way back to the present, then it's just like there's bits and pieces and fragments. So it's been an exercise in giving myself space and time to recover from it. Before the flashback, I was moving forward with a lot of these goals that I had. And now everything still kind of feels like word salad in my head. It's improving, and it will keep improving with time, and I will get back to my own baseline and my sense of equilibrium. It's really hard when I don't know what triggers it. Usually over time, at the most a week or two, usually I can figure out what triggered a specific PTSD event. But so far I haven't figured it out, and I can't even think too hard on it because it starts to send me back there. I'm currently between therapists. I parted ways with my previous therapist just a couple weeks ago. We had been trying for a few months, and she kind of felt like it was going nowhere, and I kind of felt like it was going nowhere, and it just wasn't the right fit, which happens. And we both like gave it our best shot. And a big factor too is she just said, you can't really get very far in therapy if you don't have the basics covered of enough sleep and enough food. And I'm like, yeah. Which is why I've been kind of stuck coping for so long in my life versus actually healing. I'm used to my own devices of just figuring things out as best I can. And probably once this has fully passed and I feel fully back to myself, then I will mentally revisit what happened that evening that caused the cascade of everything being triggered. So I just wanted to share that.